Back when I was a kid, I was playing Barbie dolls on my bed. I was laying flat on my stomach, and all of a sudden, it felt as if my bed was breathing. It's kind of difficult to explain in words until you actually feel it yourself. I was so taken aback that I actually had to put my ear against the bed to make sure that that was actually happening. It was more like I was hearing a heartbeat. It was not mine for sure. Everything was so still and calm that it was clearly audible. Without wasting another second, I ran straight to my mom and explained to her everything, but she clearly didn't believe me. There was no way that I was going to go back to sleep on that bed ever again, so for a few nights I slept with my parents in their bedroom, but eventually I did end up getting the ability to go back to sleep on my own bed. It was terrifying. For a long time I couldn't sleep at night thinking about the incident. The most sensitive explanation that I can make out is that maybe something was hiding under my bed that afternoon, which again will remain a mystery because I never dared to check under my bed. And even though this is equally scary, but thankfully this has never happened to me again. It was a one-time experience. I had a bad experience, so what's yours?
Has anyone had this kind of experience too? A few years ago, something really odd happened to my husband. We live in Japan in a part of the city with very few foreigners. I'm white and I can't even remember the last time I saw another white woman in my area. At that time I was heavily pregnant and mostly staying home. My husband would pick up groceries from the local supermarket after work, and one day he came home telling me that he saw me at the store. And why was I there? I wasn't. I had been home all the time. He swore he had seen me there at the supermarket from a short distance. I don't remember the reason why he didn't go to whatever person that was to talk to them. And this story gave me the creeps. I asked him several times, "Are you sure it was me?" And he was 100% convinced that it looked like me, including the pregnant belly. I haven't forgotten this story in years, and sometimes it makes me think, what was it that I saw? It made me feel uneasy.
This is a long one, but I'll try to tell it in a nutshell without removing the key parts of it. I had separated from my kid's dad and was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment. My 3 kids were in one room and I was in the other. So one night I went to bed after putting them to sleep. I turned off the lights and all of a sudden, when I was half awake, half asleep, I felt steps coming from the living room into my room. So I thought one of my kids had woken up and that they were coming to sleep in my bed. So, curious, I asked, "Who's there and what happened?" No answer, so I asked again. Again, no answer. And the steps stopped, so I jumped off the bed and checked the whole apartment, which was easy since it was very small. I checked under my children's bed. Nothing. They were sound asleep. I even checked in the shower. Nothing. Nothing at all. I went back to bed super scared and I covered my head with the blankets. A few minutes later I heard the steps again, but this time they actually entered my room and walked up to my bed. They then went to my closet, turned back again and left the room. All this time I was praying under the covers, thinking that if I uncover myself, I would be seen by a person with a knife or something. When the steps faded away, I ran out and searched. Again, I found nothing. I was so very scared, but I went back to bed. This time, however, I suffered sleep paralysis. And I felt something lying next to me, and I heard it saying, "Be careful who you let in." I was sweating and praying when the paralysis stopped. I turned on my lamp, and as soon as I did, the bulb exploded. I jumped off the bed as if I were ejected by a spring, ran to my kid's bedroom and stopped sleeping in my bedroom for a long time. After a while, I met this guy who ended up stealing from me after the second and last date. Was this a warning? My sister lives in a room in the basement of our house, and the rest of us live in rooms upstairs. One time that she was in the bathroom downstairs, she heard people whispering outside of her door, and she started seeing shadows blocking the light underneath it. And it looked like people were walking past the door. She messaged in the family chat, telling us to cut it out and that we were starting to freak her out and that it wasn't funny. And we could only reply saying, "No, we're not." We went downstairs and there was nothing. She came out of the bathroom. She was incredibly freaked out. Yeah, I know it was a short story. It still just creeped the shit out of us. Last time I was at home, I'm away for school. My mum was getting ready in the bathroom, which is across the hall from the living room. My sisters and I were asleep and my dad was already at work. She heard a young voice very clearly say, "Hey Mum." And she didn't even bother checking because she knew we were all asleep and we were all older now. It sounded like an 8-year-old. My parents used to be very skeptical about paranormal things, but since they moved into this house, they think something is there and they fully believe in the paranormal now. They won't let us talk about ghosts in the house at all because they don't want to attract them. There are plenty more experiences than this. About 2 months ago, I was sitting in the dining hall of my university, eating lunch with a friend, when all of a sudden, midway through my sentence, I noticed out of the peripheral vision that my water cup moved a bit. My friend didn't notice, so I brushed it off as seeing things and continued finishing my sentence. Then, as soon as I finished saying whatever it was I was telling my friend, we both clearly saw my water cup slide from one side of the table to the other. On its own. It was fast too, much faster and further than the previous movement. I began laughing hysterically and my friend's eyes were wide open, jaw to the floor. Every time I mention it to someone else though, they don't find it as interesting or brush it off as I initially did. Anyways, I just wanted to share this odd experience and see what other experiences people may have encountered. Edit. Alright, I didn't go into too much depth, but there are a couple of details to this. One, some people have been saying that perhaps the condensation from my cup caused it to slide across the table. Although this is something that happens and I've seen it happen before, I don't think it is the case. I can't prove it or say that I'm 100% correct with my assumption, but I recall that my water cup was empty. I already drunk the water itself. Furthermore, my friend's cup had a light ring of moisture around the bottom of his cup, but on the contrary, it didn't move at all. So, this was why I started laughing on the spot. I couldn't explain it in any way, so I just accepted it. I'm naturally very skeptical of everything, but this, along with other minor unexplainables I have experienced, they are and have started to change my perspective, allowing me to recognize when there is a greater force present. I hope that this clears things up a little bit, and I love all the stories in the comments too. You guys rock. I have 3 experiences to share. First, when I was younger, around 7 or 9 years old, I was in bed trying to get to sleep. I used to sleep in a bathroom with my mother and sister. We had a bunk bed and one single bed. I was laying on the bottom bunk trying to sleep when my blanket got pulled off me with force. Mind you that there's no way whoever was on the top bunk could have reached down and pulled my blankets off. And with the other bed in the room, not only was it far away from the bunk bed, but for them to be able to reach over and do it, they'd have to get past the table that was in the way. So if one of my siblings were pulling a prank, they wouldn't have had enough time to get off the bed, pull my blankets off and run back to theirs without me catching them. After my blanket got pulled off, I was pretty scared because my house at the same time was haunted according to my family. But I pulled my blanket back over me and then about 5 minutes later, it happened again. I was still scared, but I was able to pull the blanket back over me again. But it then happened a 3rd time. After that, I got out of bed and went straight to the living room to tell my mum. It never happened again after that. Second story. Towards the start of this year, I woke up early one day, around 6 a.m. After I got up, I went into the backyard to check on my cats when I saw what looked like a completely black head peek around the corner of a fence. The fence is inside my backyard. It should be noted that I live across a road from a cemetery, like it literally takes 30 seconds to walk to it. It's all I see when I look out of my bathroom window, but even though I've lived there for 3 years, this was the first time I had ever seen such a thing. Third, and my last experience. It happened in July of this year, on the 9th of July. My mum sadly passed away from cancer about 2 weeks after she passed. I went to her bedroom to see if my sister was hungry. Because of the size of the house, my sister and mother shared the same room. After knocking on the door a few times and getting no answer, I slowly opened the door. I tried saying her name a few times, but she didn't respond, so I assumed that she was in a deep sleep. Anyway, I hadn't turned on the light because I didn't want to wake her up, but I swear I could see a pair of legs in my mum's bed. Mind you that we didn't let anyone sleep in Mum's bed, mainly because it was too dirty. Also, I found out the next day that the reason my sister wasn't responding is because she wasn't even home. So it turns out that when I saw what I'm thinking and kinda hoping it was, I saw my mother's ghost. There was no one else that could have been in that room. Sorry, this is so long that I had to tell it as I remember. So maybe 2 or 3 people do believe me, but it's easy to try to make excuses even to yourself. The house my mum and stepdad live in used to have what I assumed was a ghost. Lots of different things happened, but I recall what I can now. It was a short, black, slinky figure, kind of tiny black Grinch looking, and it was super fast, like it ran everywhere. I used to wake up with something grabbing my shins and then wake up with random bruises on my legs way too often. One night I woke up to something with its hands around my throat, but passed it off as a dream or something. Not long after, when my brother was visiting, it grabbed him around the neck. I heard a loud noise like banging or something falling and ran to see what it was, and objects from the television cabinet, things like candles, ornaments and photo frames were all on the ground, and some were on the other side of the room, too far of a distance to have just fallen there. My mum assured me we were stronger than it and suggested I tell it to go away. Sounds simple, but every time I felt like it was there, I would do just that, and eventually it all did stop. Not a creepy house at all now, and I've spent maybe 2 years living there alone while they lived overseas. Still though, I did sleep with the lights on. Now though, I've been living with my partner at another house in the same valley about 45 minutes away for around about 1.5 years. Maybe 6 months ago, while I was sleeping in the spare room by myself on 2 single bed mattresses stacked on top of each other, I woke up at about 2 or 3 a.m. to my bed shaking backwards and forward to what felt exactly like someone kicking my bed really hard at the foot of the mattress. Quite violently, to describe it in some way. I remember opening my eyes terrified and closing them again in fear. The room felt horrible, sickening from the fear that I was feeling, and I tried to sing out a bit, but I couldn't make any noise but whimper. So I went to reach for my phone on the chair next to the bed for a light, but it was like something was holding my hand back from reaching over. I opened my eyes and pushed hard to get my phone, grabbed it and quickly turned on my torch when I saw a little black creature like the one from the above story run into a dark corner. I shone the light there and it was gone. Now, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences. I can usually calm myself, but the feeling in the room and the ability of this thing to physically control me and move the bed to such a degree scared the life out of me. So from then on, I did not sleep in the spare room. The weirdest thing about this instance is the next day our landlord/neighbor came over and happened to mention that the day before she had a visitor who had a bad spirit attached. She said they did some healing, and afterwards she saw a little black creature described exactly the same running through her house. Then I told her my experience, and it really spun us both. I'm not sure if it's the same creature that terrorized us in the other house in the valley, or if it is something new that's just trying to get to me. Still, I am again starting to sleep with the lights on. Kia ora kaha. Grim here. Thank you very much for coming along and listening today. Today was another very special one, as I was also joined by an amazingly talented narrator by the name of Interscale Wifey. She is amazingly talented, and all of her details and video information will be in the description below, so please jump over to her channel after listening to a couple more of mine and give her a subscribe if you're not already. On my end, if you have enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, do all the usual let's get this algorithm moving sort of stuff, and then join in to the next one. Well, as always, I won't drag this out. Have yourself a good day or night wherever you are. Be safe. And, as always, this is Grim, and I'm, signing off.